I'm Dr. Geoff Soloway. I'm the founder of MindWell. I'm delighted to welcome you today to our webinar on the Better Brain Diet, Eating for Mental Health and Peak Performance. We've got a special guest with us today, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, who I'll introduce in just a moment. I want to welcome everyone to today's session. Many of you are members of MindWell and engaging on the MindWell platform, doing our regular classes, doing a training like the Take 5 Daily. Maybe you're using our new self-assessment tool. If you haven't been on MindWell in a while, we've got a lot of new tools. We're always adding new things, so I welcome you to check those out. And as you know, our core practice at MindWell is around Take 5. It's about learning to kind of self-regulate our nervous system in a different way from our nutrition, which we're going to be talking about today, but it's more of our focusing our attention in different ways. So I'm going to welcome everyone to kind of bring their attention into the present moment, because you're going to be getting a lot of information today that's really valuable. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing our full selves here, feeling our feet on the floor, our bums in our chair if we're sitting, lifting and lengthening up through our spine, rolling open our shoulders, taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. One more deep breath in and a deep breath out. And just noticing what's going on within and without, and doing our best to greet our present moment with a sense of acceptance, of non-judgment, with patience. Regardless of what happened this morning, you're here now. Let's try and let go from maybe any busyness from the morning, what's coming in the future. And we're going to do our best to bring our full attention into today's session. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Dr. Bonnie Kaplan to join us and join her expertise. Dr. Kaplan is a Professor Emerita in the Cumming School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. She's published widely on the biological basis of development disorders and mental health, particularly the contributions of nutrition to brain development and brain function. Dr. Kaplan was selected as one of 150 Canadian difference makers in mental health in honor of Canada's 150th birthday. So real honor to have her here. You may have even caught Bonnie's session with MindWell. I think it was about 3 years ago, which was a real hit. And we're so delighted, Bonnie, that you came back to join and share some updates with us today. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me for an encore performance, Geoff. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, and we've got a great group online with us, and to everybody who's here to join, I want to remind them that we like to make it interactive. We have a number of questions that we'll be asking the audience, and there is a chat there. And if there are questions that are coming up for you, you can put it into the chat, and I'll do my best to kind of integrate it into the conversation at an appropriate time. It's hard to read the chat and listen to Bonnie at the same time. So we'll do our best, and maybe we'll see them towards the end. But we love to hear what's going on for you and questions that are coming up for you. So don't hesitate to share in the chat there. But Bonnie, maybe let's kick things off by just talking about some of the essential brain nutrients. And I think what's amazing about your work is that, you've got this amazing book, The Better Brain, where you've distilled all this into meaningful, digestible, pun intended, stories and anecdotes and research into the impact of nutrition and on our brains and mental health. And so it's just very accessible how you share this information. But what are the essential brain nutrients, or what profound impacts do they have on our mental state?
So if you and I were just sitting and having a chat over a cup of tea, Geoff, I would say, would you first tell me which nutrients you think are not essential? but I'm not going to put you on the spot here. I used to do something in my talks years ago where I would present the data that we had showing how foundational nutrients are for brain function. And then always at the end of the talk, and I did this for quite a few years, I had a section where the heading was why this isn't magic. Because I understood that people thought I was studying magic. How could vitamins and minerals influence brain health? Because that's the way I was taught too. And so I didn't really think vitamins and minerals were really essential at all. So anyway, at some point I decided this is backwards. Why am I putting it at the end? Let's start from the beginning. And that's what you're giving me the opportunity to do today, to begin with a basic understanding of what nutrients actually do in our brains. And so, as you know, Geoff, I have 3 slides, and they're a little biochemical-y, but they're not difficult to understand, especially because I'm here to simplify them for you. This first one is very simple. I want everybody to think about your brains in terms of metabolism. And you've heard the word metabolism. I mean, it's, I think, mysterious to a lot of people, but it really just means the process by which we transform one compound to another. And so if you have chemical A, it needs to be transformed to chemical B. Because we are mammals, and almost all, possibly 100%, I've never been able to determine if it's totally all of our reactions to get from chemical A to chemical B are enzymatic, meaning they require an enzyme. This is what the process looks like. Chemical A uses an enzyme to be converted to chemical B. And we're taught that in school. You've heard of enzymatic reactions, you've heard the word enzyme. Unfortunately, what we're not taught is that enzymes require cofactors to do their work. And the word cofactors should be taught, I think, at least by grade 5, grade 6, but it isn't. And I ask people all the time, I ask children in my family, have you been taught what a cofactor is? And they haven't. And it just means the compound based on minerals and vitamins that enable enzymes to work. So you can see, to get from chemical A to chemical B, you must have minerals and enzymes, minerals and vitamins on board. If you don't, what happens? You have sluggish pathways. I mean, the pathway is simply sluggish. That enzymatic reaction is slow and inefficient. And someday, maybe we'll have a DSM that diagnoses people for sluggish pathways, but we're not there yet. So would you go on to the next slide? Thanks, Geoff. Now, unfortunately, in this setup, we couldn't animate the slides the way I usually do it. So I'm going to ask you to pay attention only to the red and the black words first. And the ones that are in red, I put them in red 20 years ago because I was giving a talk to an audience of lay people. And I thought, oh, some of these terms, like the ones in black, are really going to put them off. I better put a few things in red that they might recognize. So I put, even back then, everybody had heard the words tryptophan, serotonin, melatonin, okay? That's the only reason they're in red, to make you more comfortable with some of this biochemistry. So the other ones are in black, and they represent complicated molecules that are part of the metabolism of tryptophan. So what this is showing you is how our brains convert tryptophan to serotonin, and then the metabolic products go on to be converted to other things. Now let's look at the green. What I did 20 some years ago is I went online and I pulled up this very simplified diagram, and I started clicking on the arrows because every arrow is an enzymatic reaction. Now, I didn't write the enzymes in there, it would have been too busy. But what I discovered was that I could not find an enzymatic reaction that didn't require vitamins and minerals. So up at the top, oh, I forgot to ask you, Geoff, can they see my arrow? Probably not, right? my cursor? No, okay, I'll just say the words, it's okay. Up at the top left, you can see there are 2B vitamins and iron that are required. There are a lot of B vitamins, very important. I hope you've been eating your green leafy vegetables every single day. There's vitamin B6 in several places. In the upper right, there are 2B vitamins plus molybdenum. You've probably never even heard of molybdenum before, and you probably don't know that it's in a lot of our vegetables, but it's a trace mineral, and you have to have it in that spot every minute of every day to get that breakdown of serotonin to the 5-methoxyindole acetate, which is at the upper right. So on and on it goes. And you can see that in some cases, you just need a single mineral like zinc. In other places, like in the bottom left, you need 1, 2, 3, 7 vitamins and minerals to get to acetyl coenzyme A, which is very important for our energy and mitochondrial function. Okay. So this illustrates the importance of vitamins and minerals. And I'll sum it up with one sentence if I haven't put you to sleep yet. Nutrients, the micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, micronutrients, are the foundation of how our brain works. They are foundational. They're not trivial. Please don't ever say, oh, it's just a vitamin. Say, oh, it's a vitamin. It's important for cofactor function in our brains. So could I see, I think there's one more slide there. Should look at my
Bonnie, I've got a
picture.
question for you, and
Sure.
I hope it's a
Yeah.
fair question. I'm curious about, I'm understanding your main point that these cofactors, these vitamins and minerals, are an essential part of the enzymatic process. Why weren't they considered part of the enzyme or the enzymatic process right from the beginning?
They are. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Well, why? I guess I was curious why they're not, I guess, documented in the same esteem. Like, why wasn't?
Ask anybody who's trained in biochemistry or neurophysiology, and they'll tell you cofactors make your metabolism work. They know, but we're not teaching the general public. Am I answering your question, Geoff?
Yeah, thank you.
It's like everything else. It's all a matter of education. So that's why I'm pleased to talk to your audience. I don't want to leave you with the impression that this is true only for tryptophan metabolism. I could show you slides for other neurotransmitters like dopamine, acetylcholine, etc. It's all the same. It's also true for ATP production, which happens, through our mitochondria. And what does that do? Well, that's our homeostatic control of excessive inflammation. So when you hear people say that the gut microbiome doesn't always work well and there's excessive inflammation, the first thing you should be thinking is, are they getting enough cofactors to enable ATP to be produced? A very simple equation that I've written about is micronutrients in, ATP out. Our mitochondria cannot perform optimally in their production of this energy molecule, ATP, unless you give them lots of cofactors. So it's the same as the neurotransmitters. And even though I'm emphasizing vitamins and minerals, obviously, because of different kinds of pathways, I sometimes say they're more important for structure than function. The essential fatty acids like omega-3s we have to pay attention to them too. What's interesting about the omega-3s is that you can put them on a metabolic pathway showing the alpha-linoleic acid conversion to EPA and DHA that you may see on omega-3 bottles or whatever. And if you look at that metabolic pathway, if you're consuming ALA, either through what is I'm just blocking on it, flaxseed, ground up flaxseed. Then, and if you don't have the cofactors on hand, it doesn't get optimally converted to EPA and DHA. So it's true in other aspects of brain development, brain structure, as well as brain function. So I'm done with biochemistry. I'm done with the main issue of the fundamentals of what nutrients do in our brain. And so because you've seen those slides, nobody will ask me ever again in all of my life, I hope, what is the important vitamin or what is the essential nutrient that I should be taking to optimize my brain health? There is no one. You need roughly, well, that's on my next slide. We'll get to that, I guess. But you need a lot of them.
Thank you, Bonnie. And
There.
we've got some questions coming in from Megan already. Yes, we're going to be talking about ADHD in a little bit. So we'll get there. But we had a poll question that I wanted to bring up just to welcome you. It's a bit of a softball here. Hopefully you're seeing it on the screen. When you think about your mental well-being, how often do you actively consider your nutrition? It's a bit of a novel way to think, and I'm not sure if our group at MindWell accurately represents the population, because we're seeing high percentage of people thinking about it most days. But we'll give everybody just under 5 seconds to answer the question on the screen. Yes, we'll talk about the impact of sugar on the brain as well. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So we're seeing about 64% of people think about this connection most days, 11% once a week, 17% rarely or never. Is that surprising to you, Bonnie? What do you typically see?
Well, I've never asked the question that way, but I am certain that when I started studying nutrition and mental health, 64% would have been down in the rarely or never, because the things that I got from people were statements like, food isn't relevant to how I feel. I mean, that's craziness. Vitamins and minerals, omega-3 fatty acids, they don't influence my mood. So this is fantastic. I mean, this is in my career, just in my lifetime, I'm sure this is a huge improvement. Either that or you have an exceptional audience, which might be true too.
Yeah, we might be a bit skewed,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I Before we move on to talking about kind of some specific mental health challenges, was there anything more you wanted to say about the link between the gut and the brain and how you can nourish both for mental health, or did you feel like you went through what you wanted to say there?
I think that I have. I've written about this before that, things are always trendy. There's something about human beings. We're always looking for silver bullets and for the shiny new penny, and you see these trends happening, and people neglect the run-of-the-mill everyday stuff, like how we build cells and how we maintain our cells. And that's certainly true also about the gut. I mean, the gut microbiome, this is not I could show you 18th century references to the importance of having your gut working well if you want a person to be anything other but irritable and grumpy and depressed. This is not a new idea, but the detailed physiology is being worked out, of course, at a much more rapid pace now. So to me, it all fits together. You have to have a healthy gut to absorb the nutrients in your food. You have to have a healthy gut to feel good. So it all makes sense. And you need the nutrients to manage the excessive inflammation by way of the mitochondria. So it all fits together.
Okay. I'm going to bring up another question as a way to kind of launch us into another topic, talking about specific mental health challenges. So on the screen, you should see another question. Which mental health challenges are you most hoping to address? And we don't list them all here for sure, but do your best to answer that question. And then I think it's going to be launch us into an interesting conversation with Bonnie about, what is the research showing in terms of, are there specific mental health challenges that is being, uh, best addressed with through nutrition, severity of those mental health challenges. Are we learning anything around specific populations, age? But we'll pause here with our poll and see what the poll says. We'll share our results. So we're seeing 42% around low energy and fatigue, 28% around difficulty focusing, brain fog, 19 around stress, anxiety, 8% mood swings, irritability, and 4% other.
Well, that's very interesting. May I tell you why?
Please do.
So there are all kinds of different types of research. I didn't put this in a slide, but different kinds of research that show the association between mental health and nutrient or dietary patterns, nutrient intake, etc. And some of them are correlational, and that, you can never prove causation. Some of them are longitudinal, and you can demonstrate causation better. And then there are over 50 really good peer-reviewed studies showing treatment effects of broad spectrum vitamins and minerals, and countless ones on omega-3 fatty acids. If we look at that last category of, and maybe I have a bias to look at the last category because that's the area my own research has been in. If we look at the last category of what happens when you treat people with various mental health problems with a broad spectrum, not a single nutrient, as you know, nothing magical, but a broad spectrum of vitamins and minerals. What symptoms are the easiest to treat? There is no question about the answer. And the answer is it's the irritability. How did you word that one again? On
Or was it
mood
mood
swings,
swings?
irritability. Yeah. And what's interesting about that descriptor, mood swings, irritability, is that those are transdiagnostic. In other words, you might have someone who's been diagnosed with depression who has irritability. You might have someone diagnosed with mood swings who has irritability, someone with ADHD who has irritability and explosive rage. These occur across all diagnoses. And those of us who have studied the broad spectrum formulas see that kind of thing go away most quickly, most thoroughly, etc. Now, those are broad spectrum formulas that include roughly 30 vitamins and minerals, not just the multivitamin that you tend to get in the drugstore.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. I was just looking at some questions that came up. I hear what you're saying about mood swings, about how it's an irritability and how it kind of crosses into a number of different mental health challenges. What's the research saying about the correlation with ADHD?
Oh, well, as you may recall, I have a slide on ADHD coming up, so maybe you should skip over. Well, you could show the next one actually, Geoff. It kind of fits in with what we're talking about. Okay, so that you did, there it is. Okay. The message of the biochemical pathways, and I did say this, ignore single nutrient magical thinking. Okay. The question we should ask is, what do our brains need for optimal functioning? And the list is long, but many of us who have studied the vitamin and mineral formulas know why there are roughly 15 vitamins and 15 minerals. I'll come back and explain why. And then the essential fatty acids, that includes the omega-3s. And then there are the amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. And you never hear about the largest category because they're so little known. But there's this category called phytonutrients, which just means plant nutrients, which are compounds that we can only get from real food, because they are packaged with healthy food. You've heard of a few of them. A few of them, there are different estimates as to whether there are more than 2,000, but there are a lot. But a few of them have names, and a few of them have been studied for their function. So you've heard of lycopene, you've heard of resveratrol, and there's a third one I usually mention, but I've forgotten it right now. It doesn't matter. The point is there are thousands, and they have been packaged by Mother Nature with the vitamins and minerals and sometimes essential fatty acids and amino acids in healthy produce. I emphasize healthy produce because that's a challenge, um, for a reason. And we have evolved to need them together. And the only way to get them together is to eat healthy food. So that's why even those of us who study nutrients in pill form, partly because it's easiest to control, we're food first people. I would never say to a person, first of all, try a broad spectrum formula. First, I'd say, let's learn about how, and we'll be talking about this, how you can improve your dietary pattern. And that's one of the reasons why. So, so now the next one is about the ADHD, and I just brought this along to illustrate how we have replication. Replication in science is absolutely essential. When I would do a study, the first thing I'd want is another lab completely independently to do the same darn thing, which might sound strange to people who aren't familiar with it, but it's so important that other people can get the same results. So we have lots of replication in the area of ADHD. And by the way, FDA for drug approval for marketing, requires 2 randomized controlled trials. So we're not talking about marketing of vitamins and minerals, so it's not relevant, but I just wanted you to understand the strength of the evidence. We have actually more than 4. We have a 5th one that's not on here because I made this slide in 2024 and another one is in 2025. But what this shows is the similarity across laboratories in 3 countries, in independent laboratories, independent scientists, and they were all doing placebo-controlled trials of formulas of vitamins and minerals that were developed here in Alberta, actually. And the reason you can put them all on one slide, you often can't put things all on one slide, but they all used one of their measures, they all used the same, the CGI-I, which stands for Clinical Global Index for Improvement, okay? So when you use the same measure, you can put them on the same scale and put them on the same slide. And what this shows is that the children, they're not all children. The first one was in adults, but in all cases, the people, when the blind was broken at the end, the people who'd been getting the real micronutrients improved the most from independent blinded raters who were rating the behavior compared to the placebo, which is orange. Okay, so with that kind of consistency, it should not surprise you that the Society for World Biological Psychiatry Societies, as well as CanMet, which is a Canadian group, have awarded level A evidence to one of the formulas used for ADHD. But it's not being taught to the pediatricians and psychiatrists who are treating ADHD. So it's only about a year old that they were given this level A evidence, but it's just not getting out there yet. So we have a
Got it.
ways to go.
What I also see as interesting here, Bonnie, is how you've got the populations are, right across the life spectrum from children to teens to adults. So you've really
Right.
got a span here, um, showing consistency and results. And I'm curious about, have you seen anything in terms of impacting different impacts across different severity of, if that's a fair question, severity of ADHD? Um,
I, I wouldn't say severity, Geoff, except I personally, now this is subjective, it's not scientific. I personally think that the majority of parents who are desperately looking for additional help and joining studies, etc., are the ones whose kids have that irritability and, rage attacks and so forth. And so, since that is the easiest to treat, when you break down the CGI and some of the other outcome measures, you see those are the symptoms that improve the most. So, and by the way, notice there's no 100%. Even with micronutrients, there's no magic out there. I want people to understand that. But I do think, given the strength of the evidence and the replication, and the fact that some parents don't want to put their kids on medication, especially very young, then I think it's worth knowing that the micronutrients are an alternative way to go. And, I don't see why it wouldn't be the first choice to try. And, then medication is always there. Medication can be tried later. We all know the data on Ritalin, etc. We know that some kids are really helped with stimulant medication. But a lot of parents would prefer to delay as long as possible, exposing their little developing brain there to medication. So this is another pathway.
Couple quick questions just in reference to that slide, Bonnie. There's two
Yes.
graphs for children on that last slide. I assume that there was two graphs there because there were two different studies.
Yes, actually, can you go back to the slide real quickly, Geoff? There are two for children. This one was in New Zealand. This one was, let's see, is this JCAP? This one was in the United States, Canada, and three sites. So it's a multi-center trial. And by the way, I should say something about this. These abbreviated journal titles, I hated abbreviating them because people might not realize these are mainstream major journals: British Journal of Psychiatry, Journal of American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, etc. These are they're not trivial journals. They're mainstream, high profile journals, high impact journals.
Got it.
Yeah.
And another follow-up question. How are the micronutrients delivered in these studies?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Most of them are in capsules. And because children sometimes have and adults sometimes have difficulty swallowing pills, I got into teaching people a better way to swallow pills. And there's a training video accessible on my website. Oh, by the way, may I just mention my website, Geoff, for your audience? You can see that my name is Bonnie Kaplan, but to find my website, because there are too many Bonnie Kaplans in the world, you have to know my middle initial is J. So bonniejkaplan.com. And you'll find videos there, research there, lists of articles, as well as a training video to teach people how to swallow pills. Oh, thanks for putting it there. In addition, one of the two companies that developed the formula that we've been studying all over the world decided to develop a better method of consuming it. Now, they both have powders that you can put into juices and everything, but drinking a prescribed juice 3 times a day, it turns out, is not an easy selling point for children. It's even harder than, hey, take these capsules 3 times a day. So it doesn't work as well. And so the teen study, I'm pretty sure the teen study I had on there was with the sublingual absorption powder. And that's from one of the two companies. It's a powder which is so microscopically finely ground that just like certain medications are absorbed under the tongue because we have blood vessels very near to the surface there, some of these vitamins and minerals are absorbed that way. So that's the other alternative that we have right now.
Wonderful, Bonnie. There's two more kind of steps I think we wanted to chat about today. I know one of them has been touching on some of the newer work that you've been doing around public policy initiatives and implications for, workplaces and homes, and starting to get into this. What does it mean for me and around me in society? And then I know everybody on the call is also interested just about how it further relates to themselves and those questions about. Is it about what I eat, or is it about the pills that I take? And some more everyday types of questions, which I want to get to. But I think it'd be interesting to just to share more about what you're seeing in terms of public policy initiatives and implications for workplace mental health strategies.
Well, that's kind of a downer, but I'll say a few words. It's really hard. I'm trying to convince our mental health system in Alberta right now to do a pragmatic trial in child ADHD. I have an international advisory group of experts in ADHD and in nutrition from 3 or 4 countries. I have been working through the bureaucracy, and it's just very difficult. We have not made much headway yet. We do have another meeting, a Zoom meeting tomorrow. We'll see if I feel a little more positive after that. There are huge public policy implications, though. And this is the good news story. I have a 5-minute video if anybody wants to see it. I can't remember right now if it's on my website. But if it isn't, email me. You can email me on my website. At the contact thing, it goes directly to me. If you have personal questions that you don't want to bring up here, we don't have time for them, feel free to email me there. I never ignore any of them. So one of this 5-minute video that I was referring to is I put together all the data that we have published showing the savings possible for the mental health system in any country. Sometimes over 90%. We have shown people who are able to decrease their medications and who are really so well for as long as, I guess, some up to 15 years we followed, that they no longer need mental health services. Now, not everybody, we still need our mental health services because, as I keep saying, it's not magic. But I would think that our bureaucrats, am I allowed to call them that? Our policymakers would pay attention to that. Recently, a very exciting area has been opened up by Julia Ruckledge, who's my co-author for the Better Brain and a former student. She's originally a Canadian, and she's at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. She's just published a whole series of studies that OBGYNs are completely ignoring, showing they can bring down preterm birth, low birth weight, etc., and resolve perinatal depression and anxiety in a much larger number of women who are given one of the broad spectrum formulas. She estimates that you would save billions of dollars in the Western world if all women were taking better supplementation than our prenatal vitamins, which are very lame relative to the broad spectrum formulas. And now they're showing that the babies who are born after exposure to the greater vitamin mineral formulas, they're better at year one. They're going to follow them for 5 years. They're better at year one in terms of cognition and mood regulation. We don't call it mood in a 1-year-old, but it's regulation of, being able to self-soothe and regulate their emotional reactivity and habituate to certain stimuli. So it's a terrific set of studies. And by the way, there's only one Ruckledge publishing, so you can look that up very easily. It's Rucklidge. Her first initials are J Ruckledge. And if you want to get into some of this exciting work, I recommend you look at that series of studies.
And I know that you had a handout that you shared, Bonnie, that we're going to be able to share with folks after the session as well. And there was a question from one of the audience members about sharing some links from resources on the internet with employees for World Mental Health Day. And I think you're very open to people sharing your resources.
Absolutely. That's why they're all on almost everything's on my website.
So I wonder if it's a good time to turn and talk about some of these things that are our
Practical.
behaviors. And I know some of these are some questions that you wrote down. Is that maybe something that some questions people can reflect on themselves?
Yes. Yeah, I get asked a lot. Actually, I developed these questions based on some research from University of North Carolina, but family physicians told me at a meeting a number of years ago, they said, I don't feel comfortable asking my patients about food, and I don't have the resources to send every single patient to a dietitian. And the reason they don't feel comfortable is that they don't eat perfectly either, you know? So I think that it's very easy to bring this topic up in this manner. You just need to say there's increasing evidence that how we eat affects how we feel. Let's talk about your diet. And for your audience, Geoff, some of them are not clinicians. Maybe they're talking to themselves. Think of it this way. Ask yourself about how much fast food you eat, how much fruit, how many vegetable servings, how many sodas. Um, and there's no right or wrong answer. But if you ask yourself those four questions, and also about fish, because we have a whole generation of children right now, I think, who don't eat fish, or very little of it, you will very quickly figure out where you're weak, where you could improve. And that's the way to start the conversation with yourself, even, and to think about what you should focus on. I can tell you, as a society, we are better at eating fruit, and we are absolutely terrible at eating vegetables. I mean, I've had people tell me, well, I usually get a lettuce leaf on my hamburger, you know, and that's their idea of a serving of vegetables. So we have a long way to go for vegetables. And do you want to go to that next slide? I think this is a very practical point that I emphasize all the time. Maybe because I live in, or when I was working more actively, I lived with one foot in the mental health world. And I know about negative self-talk and how people who have periods of depression do not need me to introduce something that they're going to fail at and then feel terrible about. I've just made them worse, right? And some of the specialty diets, even though there's good research on them, the paleo diet, keto diet is very difficult. Vegan diet, gluten-free diet, these are difficult. So don't start there. If you feel that, because by the way, later you'll come tell me, I tried diet doesn't work. Well, that's kind of a general statement, you know. Don't do it to yourselves. Don't make yourself feel bad. Don't give yourself a challenge that is beyond you. Start where it's much more feasible to feel like a success. Learn about real food versus ultra processed. It's called food, but it isn't food. Geoff, do you know what the definition of food is? I'll put you on
No.
the spot. No? Okay.
I was
Food
gonna,
is what we consume to build and maintain ourselves. Two-thirds of what our children in North America consume is not food. I should have said, two-thirds of the caloric intake of our children in North America is not food. Over half of what we so-called smart adults, educated people, what we consume is not food. It's ultra-processed chemicals. You all know what it is. There's usually no need for a dietitian to shift yourself over toward eating real food and not, I just spotted that, get a transcript, read my book. I don't usually say that to people, but everything I'm saying in there today is pretty much in the book. And it's written for lay people. Okay, it's not written for scientists, even though Julie and I are scientists. So do something that you can handle and that you can succeed at as your first few steps. And I think in that handout that I gave you, Geoff, we give you some examples of first steps, like how to get yourself off of soda and onto carbonated water as a first step, something like that. Would you go to the next slide? I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
I've got a question for you, Bonnie, before we go there. Have you heard the term nutritional density? And like soil density and like
yes,
soil riching. So we're talking about real foods versus processed foods, and
yes.
that you can take the conversation a little bit further and asking like, just because it's not ultra processed, are the foods we're eating, are they missing a lot of the nutrients this day because of the soils they're being grown in?
This is a huge problem, Geoff, and I wasn't going to get into this level of detail, but the reason that the broad spectrum formulas have roughly 15 vitamins and 15 minerals is that that's if you have a healthy soil with good solid nutrient density, they call it balanced soil in agriculture, then you have roughly 15 minerals, and then a healthy plant can absorb those 15 minerals and use those minerals to synthesize 15 vitamins, roughly. Okay. We can't do that. We can only synthesize a tiny bit of B vitamins in our gut, but we can't do what those healthy plants do. So we really need, it all begins in the soil. We need good soil. And 97% of the arable soil in North America is saturated by things like glyphosate, which bind up the minerals and don't enable the plants to use them to synthesize the vitamins. So it's a huge problem. And if you care about this, you need to go to your farmers markets, talk to your farmers that you're buying produce from, and ask if they use regenerative methods, if they're balancing the soil, testing the mineral content, etc. Let the farmers know that they have some educated consumers.
So has that been a kind of a growing partnership in your efforts to more public policy is with agriculture?
I was thrilled to start getting invited to conferences to speak to food producers. And they made me feel so wonderful because they said, no one's ever talked to us about the importance of what we do for human brain health. No one. They didn't know what happens in our brains as a result of their producing healthy produce. So I've done my best to educate as many people as I can in that area. Yes,
We've got a specific question before I go back to your slide. I know you want to go back.
sure. Sorry.
It was kind of interested me, came up from Anita about carbonated water. Are you seeing impacts of carbonation on nutrients? Like is
I
negative
don't know of any
impacts?
research on that. Maybe one of your listeners does. I should tell you the reason that I use that as an example is that when I've taught, this is again subjective, anecdotal, I don't have research on it. But when I've talked to people who say they're addicted to drinking a certain amount of soda every day, and I ask them, is it the sugar? Is it the carbonation? What is it? They think that carbonation is part of it, especially in hot weather or climates that are warmer than the one I live in. And so switching them to carbonated water is a good first step to start decreasing their consumption of soda and getting them onto just water. So that was my reason for bringing it up, but I'm afraid I can't really answer the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to confirm, was it this slide you wanted to share? And
Yeah.
when you speak about this, I wonder if you can also kind of integrate a response around sugar and speak a little bit about sugar, because I know it's also top
Sure.
of mind for a lot of people today.
Well, a lot of the things that we're referring to, like sugar, which is in all, the sodas, or the artificial sugars, which it's turning out are almost as bad for you, if not more so. Um, the harm that they do is that they're replacing the good stuff. So if you want to make sure that you're getting enough of the nutrients that your brain needs every minute of every day for those biochemical pathways, then you need to think of everything that you put in your mouth in terms of their contribution to those pathways. And I didn't see any sugar helping the enzymes work, right? So let's talk about what you should be consuming. We have a group in Canada, excuse me, that is called Half Your Plate. And I think the visual that they have, and it's in the handout that I gave you, Geoff, a little differently, really shows, I think, a way to think of when you sit down for your, especially for your evening meal, where you're probably most likely to sit down to a plate of food, that half of your plate should be filled with vegetables and maybe some fruit, but fruit should maybe be the way I grew up, fruit was our dessert, right? Because of the sugar. So half your plate be vegetables, fish a couple times a day, meat if you're not a vegetarian, dairy for all the good stuff that we get in terms of protein and other nutrients. If you're going to eat complex carbs, eat whole grains. If you are looking for snacks, look for nuts and seeds, especially for oils. Trend toward the healthier oils like olive oil, as shown here. And then a chapter of our book has recipes, but I always say don't buy our book for the recipes. There are billions more online. But we did try to put some recipes in that are for beans and legumes because these are so good for us. They are so healthy for us and they save us money, which we all need to do right now in terms of food costs, right? Some of them, like lentils, don't buy them canned. Lentils cook in just a few minutes. Some of the others you might want to buy canned. There's nothing wrong with buying canned vegetables. If you don't have time, if you don't have a pressure cooker or you don't have time to cook them, just rinse them if you want to get rid of the extra sodium. Same thing, we have this bias about frozen vegetables. If you pick up a bag of frozen peas, I always use them as an example because they never seem to put any additives in there. They're flash frozen at harvest. They might have more nutrients than the peas that have been sitting in the produce section for a few days. There's nothing wrong with eating frozen peas, and that's true of a lot of other frozen vegetables. This is how you can shift your diet, but don't do it all at once. Avoid failure, okay? Don't beat yourself up and go ahead and snack on something different occasionally, but introduce these things maybe one day a week and then gradually more and more.
Thank you, Bonnie. A quick question, follow-up around cheese from Gwen. Is cheese considered a processed food? Maybe
Oh,
which cheese?
that's very interesting. There probably all of cheese would have to be considered to be processed, but we shouldn't think of things as being black and white, processed, unprocessed. There are levels of processing. Researchers tend to use the NOVA classification, which is 4 levels. For most lay people, I use 3 levels. The frozen peas would be in the middle level. Like it's processed because it's frozen, but it's not terrible for you. It's quite okay. Same thing about some of the cheeses. They're processed, but they're not a pile of chemicals. Whereas Cheese Whiz, I used a brand, maybe I shouldn't have. Something like Cheese Whiz is fake cheese and it's chemicals. And that we could safely say we should avoid.
Got it. Got it. I'll give you a moment. Just a quick shout out for people who are interested in recipes. A lot of obviously good resources in Bonnie's book and otherwise. Mindwell also puts on a regular cooking class from a holistic nutritionist, which is a very popular class with Chef Kristen. So if you're interested in some of those recipes and cooking videos, you can find that on the Mindwell library. Um, I think that there's been a couple questions, Bonnie. I know we've only got about a minute or two left about is it taking nutrients? Is it about eating whole foods? And I think we've heard your response. It's about, getting what you can from a diet. What about people who are taking formulas or vitamins, minerals? Can you give us any guidance in terms of things to look for when we're trying to select vitamins or minerals like products?
Sure. So the two products that are most studied that were developed in Alberta, may I give those two websites? I'm not affiliated with the companies, and in fact, not a single study has ever been funded by these two companies because we knew that no one would believe our data, and we wanted arm's length, totally different from drug studies, right? If you wanted to put truehope.com and heartynutritionals.com in the chat, that would be great. And now I just lost track of the question you asked me because I wanted to say that. Oh, what to look for. If you're looking over the counter, be sure to look for a wide array of minerals. Minerals are so important for how our brains work. And people, they just talk, thank you, that's it. They just talk about vitamins. I still have people who ask me which vitamins I take, and I always say, well, I try for 15, but didn't you also mean the minerals? I keep trying to educate people. So I would say try to get a broad array.
Okay. Well, I think we're at the end of our time. So I just want to take a moment all together before everybody signs out to take five, take a deep breath, be in our presence, and just take a moment to acknowledge all the work Bonnie's done over decades of her work in influencing really positive movement. Perhaps the recognition of vitamins and minerals aren't the proactive preventative approach is not as um, regarded as the reactionary approach. We understand that as our mindfulness community here. But we certainly appreciate all the work you've done and for coming to share with us again. And no doubt we're going to tap you again and hope to get some further updates in the years to come. So you've got a lot of love in the chat here. You can take a moment to read your comments here, Bonnie. Big shout out to everybody for joining us today, for all of your great questions. We are going to follow up with the video where you can find it on Mindwell with the handout that Bonnie's been mentioning. So we thank you for taking the time to be here today and to continue to spread this important word.
Thank you for having me again, Geoff. I hope it wasn't too redundant with what I said 3 years ago.
Not at all. New folks, new faces, and you know what? It takes us a couple times to hear things before we really digest it.
That's true. Thanks.
Okay, everybody, have a wonderful day. We'll see you again soon.